Good morning. About an hour ago, the shortlist was announced and I got one spoiler because I was stupid enough to look on Instagram before starting this clip. That was one I did predict, which is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Another one I predict is Damon Copperhead. Wandering Souls. I think I saw so many good reviews that I think that will be on there as well. I hope so because I want to read it. Stone Blind is a good possibility, but that's only because the author is one of the most famous authors on the list. I saw a lot of good reviews for Fire Rush as well. So that is my prediction, but let's actually see what the shortlist is.
Of the Women's Prize for Fiction 2023. Now my judges and I had 60 beautiful books on our long list. We had to whittle it down to just 6. They are absolutely fantastic, and we've all
Ooh, that was exciting.
What is on our shortlist this year?
Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks is
Fire
a
Rush.
brilliant celebration of black womanhood. It's a story about dub reggae, friendships, love and loss, which spans London, Bristol and Jamaica.
Trespasses by Louise.
Oh, I don't want to read that one.
In Northern Ireland, and it is ostensibly a love affair, but it also weaves in community and religion and politics, and it is a deftly woven novel, which I think will astonish you.
Black Butterflies by Priscilla It's an amazingly written book set against a backdrop of the siege in Sarajevo, about love and loss, and about where your home truly is.
Demon Copperhead.
Yes, I thought Demon Copperhead will be on there.
Reworking of David Copperfield. It's the story of a young boy who's destined to live a life of nothing and who, despite all the odds, rises above it. The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell is an exquisite book. It takes you to a world that you won't have lived in. It explores extraordinary themes of bravery, of pure evil, and I absolutely loved it.
Pod by Laline Paull.
What? Oh, not the dolphin book. Okay, someone's at my door, but the dolphin book? Okay, I stand corrected. I was too quick to judge, had too much prejudice before start reading Pod. Because yes, it is a dolphin book, but so far I think it's going to be so much more than that. I am now halfway through the book and I am having an amazing time. I'm really enjoying it. So we follow different dolphins, we follow different perspectives. They are written in a way that the levels of emotion and the capability of awareness feels very human. And it is almost like we are reading from like an historical tribe of people, but we're reading from the perspective of dolphins. Ocean life is a big theme in this book, and the way that the inhabitants of the oceans communicate is also a big theme. I have the feeling that this author really knows a lot about marine life, but I don't, so I'm not really sure how realistic everything is, but we follow the dolphin that is kind of described on the blurb. She is part of a pod, which is a group of dolphins, but we notice that she is a bit different in her way, that she is able to communicate with others. And then we have a dolphin that is born in captivity. It is very painfully described how he is actually kind of well treated in captivity as far as he knows, but he really has that Stockholm syndrome, and I feel like that may be a bit of a metaphor for imperialism. I don't know how seriously I should take this book in that regard, if it is just what is literally on the page or that the author is using this as a metaphor to tell a bigger story. I'm also just halfway through, so clearly I cannot really judge that. I'm really interested to see the author's intent behind this book, because I think we're really quick to just see anything fantasy as a metaphor, especially in literary fiction, but I don't want to be too quick to do that if that is not at all the author's intent. And this book is just a love letter to the ocean. First finishing, then listening to a podcast or an interview and see how I should interpret this book. But I'm having a great time. I think it is really well written. I love the pacing of the book. I love the different characters. Just, it's well done, and I didn't think an author would be able to pull off a literary fiction about dolphins. So yeah, I'm having a great time so far. I was able to fit 3 of the Women's Prize books on my May TBR, which is really great. So of course I got Pod because that's what I started. I got Fire Rush and I got The Marriage Portrait. So those will be the first 3 that I will read. But I will get back to you once I have finished Pod, and I think I will listen to Fire Rush after this. So I finished listening to Pod by Laline Paull, and I have to say I really enjoyed this. I really did not expect to enjoy this so much. First of all, because I had heard mixed things about it, but I think it's a great book. I like the first part of the book better than the second half, because I think the first bit of the book is a bit grittier, is a bit more about the characters. And when everything comes together, I do think that the pathos is becoming a little bit too heavy in this book. It is quite clear that the author really does want to tell something about fishing, about environmental impact of humans being involved in the ocean. And while that is a great message, I did feel that wanting to bring that message to the reader kind of lessened the book in a literary quality. I would have preferred if the book had held on to that literary quality it was showing in the beginning of the novel and not go on the activism route, because I think what happened because of that is that the journeys of the characters were tied too neatly together because of that. And while I fully applaud the author for writing a book with these themes and making people aware of these themes, I don't think it served the literary quality of this book in the best way. I also think I would have gotten the message if it had played with my emotions a little bit less. So overall, I'm going to give this a 4-star. It could have been higher had the ending wrapped up in a little bit more of a gritty, natural way. But this is a great start to this vlog, because I did not expect that this would be a book that I liked. Maybe that's why I started with it, to just get it out of the way. But it was really, really great. I don't know how I will recommend it to people, but I will recommend it to people. I wanted to read The Marriage Portrait next, but Script decided to remove it from their app. I'm sure that they don't have the rights anymore, which is unfortunate, so we'll have to get a copy of that one. And I started listening to Fire Rush. This is about 3 friends, and we really clearly have one main character who go on clubbing every evening, and they talk a lot about their culture, about their heritage, and how that reflects in dancing and music. And there is some music and a little bit of singing as well in the audiobook, which I'm really enjoying. On the first evening that we meet and that they go out, they meet this man called Moose. Our main character really builds a connection with him. It's clear that the character relationships are going to be a little bit messy, especially in between the friendships. I'm not sure if it's the writing or the narration, but I can really feel the importance of dancing and music within the writing and the narration. The setting of the book is boring me. I'm not really that interested in the whole clubbing. I hope that we start to drift away from that and see the characters also during the day, or see them maybe interact on a different level than when they're dancing. But maybe that's kind of the point of the novel. I could understand that as well. Yeah, I'm not that far in. I think I've listened to about 3 hours now. So I hope that we get some different settings, a little bit of a fresher chapter maybe, because it feels quite monotonous so far. Yeah, this is going to be a 3-star prediction, but let's just finish it before I judge. I am planning to go to the bookstore next week, and then I can pick up a copy of The Marriage Portrait. So I will take you along when I do that. Picking up this book. Finished Fire Rush, and I feel conflicted about this one, because objectively I can see that it is a good book, that it is well written literary fiction with some originality within the writing, within talking about art, with music. You can almost call it somehow genre bending with how music and rhythm and sound has its own art form within this literary fiction, but my problem was that I just really did not enjoy it. I just couldn't care about the main character. I thought she was so generic that I didn't get a moment to really care about what happened to her. I think my concerns were that it was boring. It was quite a boring reading experience for me because I didn't really care. But my concern that it was all about the nightlife was definitely not true. There was a lot of political discussions, a lot of activism, police brutality, racism. So a lot of big themes are discussed in this novel. I just think that for me it was the writing that I just didn't get along with. I can objectively see the value of this book, but I just personally didn't have a great time reading it. If it does sound like your cup of tea, I would recommend the audiobook because, like I said, music and sound is so important in this novel. The audiobook narrator, and I think also the editor who edited the music, was just genius. Would highly recommend consuming it in that way. But I think I will end up giving it a 3.5 star. I could definitely see how people would give this 4 or 5 stars, but I always do calculate kind of my own enjoyment in my rating. So it's a 3.5, maybe a 4, because it's hard if I can see that it's a good book, but I just didn't really enjoy it. I don't want to give it a low rating. And 3.5 for me is on the lower side. I did start this morning David Copperfield as well. I listened to 2 chapters of that one and I'm already hooked, but I'll talk more about that when I've read more because it's a very big audiobook, 21 hours I think. All the other books on the list I will read physically. Whilst I read those physically, I will listen to Damon Copperhead. Did I say David Copperfield? Damon Copperhead, and we'll see how that goes, but I think I will really like it because I'm already really enjoying the narration style of the first person narrative and of him really telling us a story. Really enjoying that. Let's keep reading. I don't have super long to update you, but this morning I woke up in the urge to just read something different, so I decided to start The Marriage Portrait. This captured my attention from the get-go. I read 116 pages just during the day, not even reading a little bit in the evening, and I am a slow reader. 100 pages a day is my absolute max usually, so this is so very promising for this book. This is set in the middle of the 16th century. We follow a young girl called Lucrezia. For a young girl, she is in her teens and she is married to a duke. Her marriage is a political one and she doesn't have a lot of choice in the matter. And we go back and forth between current day, so her marriage, where she thinks that her husband's going to kill her, and we see her during her childhood. This is just, oh, the writing. I'm enjoying the writing so much. It is so, how do I say this? It's like my favorite kind of historical fiction writing, and I still have a hard time pinpointing what that is, but it has the same feeling to me as the other Bennet sister and Love and Fury, which is just really focused on one person and their household. While the story is slow, the writing is really captivating. I don't know really what to say so far, but I know I will love this because I'm just getting along with the writing so well. I have a live show right now, but then I will get back to this book and spend my evening reading this because I'm just having the best of times. I've also listened to a few more hours of Damon Copperhead and I'm loving that so much as well. Again, the writing and the narration style, I think I said it in a clip earlier, so my thing. Enjoying it so much. These could both be contenders of the books that I would want to win. I think I'm already enjoying them more than I enjoy both Pot and Fire Rush. I still think a lot about Pot. The commentary I had on the book, especially later in the novel, still very much stands, but I'm really impressed with this shortlist so far. I have finished The Marriage Portrait and I am not sure what I'm going to rate this. It'll probably still be a 5-star, but I have to say that the second half kind of lost me a little bit in some points. It definitely became a bit slower. What is both the genius and the downfall of this book is that the plot is very simple. There's just this one event we are working towards, which is very captivating when you're reading it. But I think it also can get a little bit monotonous during the second half of a book, especially if you have a book that is 400 pages. Having said that, the writing is just so amazing. 10 out of 10 quality writing. And I love the characters, I love the atmosphere. My only thing maybe is that the plot was too simple, but then again, it also really works. So I'm not sure. I'm just gonna say that I'm going to give this 5 stars, but I will definitely have to think a few more days about it. I did kind of rush to finish it because I really don't have a lot of days left to finish these books before the winner is announced. I did yesterday start reading Trespasses and I read about 70 pages of it. This is set in the 1970s in a small town, I think near Belfast, and we follow our main character. She's a teacher, but she also works some nights at the pub, at her family's pub, and we follow her as we see that she is not really happy or satisfied in her environment. We notice that the politics that are going on, which of course are scary and horrific in that time, she really wants to disengage from that. She's really kind of done with it, I think, in a way. That is just me saying that right now. Maybe she will react to it differently later in the novel, but she meets this older man called Michael. She very soon starts to have a certain fascination for him. I think she's falling in love with him though. I knew that this was going to be about a younger woman. She is, I think, in her mid-20s, falling in love with an older married man, which is like a premise I am not really up for, but I think interwoven with the political climate this is going to be interesting. The writing is a bit bland, it's a bit simple, but maybe that will work for this novel. I will have to read more to really know how I feel about it. One thing that I do know that I don't really love, I don't know if it's experimental writing, but grammatically there were some choices made and I'm not really dwelling with it because I love experimental writing, but not when it gets in the way of you understanding the novel. And I only really love it if it seems to be its own character, when the writing is its own character, and I don't really feel that is happening in this novel. I don't know how I feel about the writing, but the plot, the character, setting, all seems great. Also, for something that feels like a contemporary novel, kind of historical fiction, is the 1970s. That's a long time ago, I feel old. It is incredibly atmospheric, which I feel like novels like this don't usually are, so that is amazing, like well done. I don't expect to give this 5 stars. Right now it feels like somewhere between a 3 and a 4, but I'm keeping an open mind and we'll see. I'm halfway through Damon Copperhead and that one is going to be a 5 star, I think. I'm enjoying it so much. So I have a few days left to finish Damon Copperhead, to read almost all of Trespasses, and to read Black Butterflies. I am set on doing this, so watch me stress out for the next days. Good morning. Through no planning of my own, today I look like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. I'm just drying my hair in braids. But yesterday evening I finished Trespasses, which I find slightly difficult to talk about because I gave it 4 stars because I think it could be a winner. I don't think it would be my winner, but I could see it winning. I think the reason why I didn't absolutely love this book is because I just didn't get along with the main character, and I know that she is supposed to be unlikable, but she was unlikable in a way that I just couldn't really carry the emotional heaviness of this book, which I also think is kind of the point. What I did find interesting is kind of how the troubles of Ireland were reflected in her as a person. I don't know enough about the troubles, so maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there was not one specific party that was right and the other was wrong. It was very much to people both doing wrong things and doing things for a reason. And I feel like that is kind of reflected in the main character of this book. She kind of has 3 roles in this book, and they're all very different. So I think the first one, the most prominent one or the most obvious one, is where she is the villain in the affair that she has with Michael, a married man. I'm sorry if the angle changed, I had to change out my battery. But then we have the role that she has as a teacher and how she takes really selflessly care of a family that is struggling. And then her third role, I think, is a little bit in between, and that is the role that she has at home, where she lives with her mother, where she is very passive and just let things happen to her. And you also see that in the relationship she has with the rest of her family. And I think most of the novel does not really do anything with these roles, they're just existing. But then the last part of the book I started to really enjoy, because all these roles started to shift and they all really tightly connected to the political climate. And I think therefore it could be a possible winner, because that is, I feel, very deliberately done and also very well done. I do think that the characters and the writing were not necessarily my thing. I give it 4 stars because I feel like it's a good book and it could be a potential winner, but not necessarily because I enjoyed it so much. I think for personal enjoyment it would be more of a 3-star. And I kind of knew that going in. I would not have picked up this book if it wasn't for the Women's Prize. Today is Friday and I have a few days left to finish everything. I have 5 hours left of the audiobook of Damon Copperhead, so that's going to be fine. And I also started Black Butterflies by Priscilla Morris. I'm now on page 26 and we have met a woman in her 50s and she lives in Sarajevo in the spring of 1992, and she is woken up at 5 in the morning because there are squatters in her mother's flat, and the government has made it legal for anyone who has left their flat to be inhabited by other people. Her mother is staying with her, so the people who arrive at her mother's flat are claiming that she has died. And then it kind of starts to escalate and she decides that her mother and her husband, who is older than she is, who doesn't work anymore, are going to England to stay with their daughter, and she stays in Sarajevo, and that is where I'm at now. It is a very similar vibe as Trespasses, just a different time period of course and a different setting, but the political tension is very much the same. The feeling of unsafeness is the same, but also the feeling of life goes on. The main character in Trespasses was still working, as is the character in Black Butterflies. The beginning of this book really reminded me of It Was Night in Caracas, I think. It's a book I read last year about the same kind of political tension in, oh gosh, I forgot, in Venezuela, I believe. It feels very similar to that, so if you've read that then you can kind of know what to expect from this, I guess. It's very readable, it's very enjoyable to read, so I'm sure I can finish this in a few days and I will get back to you on my final thoughts of the last 2 books of the shortlist. Good morning and welcome to this terrible heat wave. I am not having a good time, but one amazing thing I have discovered about our new house: the coolest place in the house is actually my office. I think it is because there's a giant tree in front of my window, so it gets a lot of shade. In our old home it was the warmest place in the house, so that is a great luxury. I'm here to talk to you about reading, of course. I've just read a bit of Black Butterflies and I'm now halfway through. This book is divided in seasons and I have just arrived at the first part, which is called Autumn, and this is a war story. So now that we get to autumn and winter, I'm getting nervous because there's a big lack of supplies in this war. That is nerve-wracking when you get into winter. First, when I was reading this, I kind of felt like just another war story, and not in a mean way, but just like I felt like I've read this before, but just in different settings. The writing really works for me. It feels like effortless in a great way. I don't think there's anything particularly special about this writing, but it really doesn't get in the way. It just does its job. It seems effortless, but you know it's not from an author's perspective. I am planning to finish this today, so I'll get cracking on that in a little bit. But first, I have finished the biggest book of this list, and that is Damon Copperhead. If you have been watching this vlog, I'm sure it's no surprise at all that I gave this 5 stars. This was so good. It was not what I thought it would be. It is definitely a retelling of David Copperfield. I recognize the characters and the basic storylines that I've seen in adaptations of David Copperfield. But what I appreciate, I think, most about this book is that it says we have these Dickensian orphans that we feel so sorry for, and even the main character at some point says, he talks about Dickens and says he knew what it was like for an orphan to suffer, and I kind of like that hint. But I like that the author showed that it is not something from the past, it just looks very different. I'm not sure this was the goal of the author, but it felt like it was kind of calling out people who sob over those Victorian orphans and look the other way when we see something like that in life now. Damon's life seems quite similar to David Copperfield's, but in the 90s and in the early 2000s we see a lot of issues of addiction, and we see a lot of differences in the US geographically. Where you grow up really matters, and the opportunities you get. There's a lot of discussion on the wealthy creating an environment for the poor and creating that environment in a way that there's not really any getting out of it. Somehow it felt new and fresh, even though I think this is a topic that's discussed more often. I really like that we got such a big book from the perspective of someone like Damon, which that felt quite fresh to me. Really great to be in his world, even though his world is not a great place to be. I guess it has the same kind of allure that David Copperfield would have. Again, I enjoyed the writing and the narration so much. I did not get bored at all, even though this is such a personal, intense reflection of one person and it's such a big book. I never got bored. Just everything about this book is great. Characters are great, plot is great, writing is great. Just everything. And I would say, I mean, I still need to finish this baby, of course, but I think Damon Copperhead is going to be my winner of this list. I'm not sure it will win though. I still think, kind of looking at the past winners, that Trespasses would be a book that would really win. Again, not my personal winner, but I think it would make sense in the context of the Women's Prize. Unless this one surprises me amazingly, I think Damon Copperhead is going to be my winner. Something I can already say on the list is that I think there's a big difference in that there are a few books that feel very original, both in writing and thematically, and there are books that feel more traditional, but that are just really well done. Books that are not my winners, but I did appreciate them for their originalities, like Fire Rush and Pot. I think The Marriage Portrait I really enjoy personally, but I don't think it has the originality to win. Damon Copperhead is also, you know, narration, the writing is very traditional, but it's really good. And I feel like it's the same with this one, where it's just objectively really good, even though it's not blowing my mind in the originality part. I feel like there's a bit of a division in the list with those two elements, and I'm not sure what the jury is going to appreciate more. I will reflect a little bit later on that, but first, let's finish the last book. It is later in the day, you can literally see the sun going down. I've had some dinner, I put on some chill clothes, and I finished Black Butterflies. I won't lie, I shed some tears at the end because it's a really beautiful emotional ending. Especially later in this book, I think the second half really surprised me. It really gave, I think, an emotional heaviness and a sense of realism, I think, that I had not necessarily expected from this book earlier on. It really felt more like a slice of life with, of course, the war story background of an artist. I enjoyed how being an artist really played into this novel. Zora's neighbors are great characters. They got a lot of emotional heaviness in this book as well, and so does her family, who is all in the UK. So I was really pleasantly surprised by this. I will remember it, but it will not necessarily be a favorite novel. I think it didn't grip me that much in the beginning. I think it is a great novel, but not something that stands out as much as some other books on this list. I will give it 4.5 stars though, because every time I read this, I was having a really good time. It discusses some difficult subjects books. Of course, clearly, this is definitely a book I would recommend, not to everyone, but to some people I know will appreciate it. Looking at all the ratings of this shortlist, I think it's safe to say that I'm very impressed by the shortlist of this year. Of course, not all the books are going to be for me. I think Trespasses and Friar Rush were two books that I could see its value of, but that just weren't kind of my kind of books. The Marriage Portrait might have been the most enjoyable. We have, of course, Black Butterflies that I just discussed that I really appreciated and enjoyed, but it's not gonna be my winner. I really liked Pot for what it was, but I mainly liked how much it surprised me, but it's definitely not my winner. But I am glad I read it because I would never have read it if it wasn't on the list. And then of course my winner, it hasn't changed, is Damon Copperhead. I will upload this in like an hour, so on Monday evening. On Wednesday the winner will be announced, and I will leave a pinned comment down below after the winner is announced, my reaction on the winner. So if you're watching this after the winner is announced, then go to the comments and I will just leave my thoughts on the winner. I would really love it as well if you would leave a prediction of your winner in a comment down below, or your reaction to the winner if you're watching this later. My winner is Damon Copperhead. The book I think will win is either Damon Copperhead or Trespasses. So those are my predictions. You will see my reaction in a pinned comment down below. It was announced while I was doing this project that we will actually get a non-fiction women's prize, for which I will definitely film a vlog as well. I cannot wait to see what kind of non-fiction picks they will come up with. I don't know the details about the non-fiction prize, but I'm very excited to get started with that one as well. If you enjoyed this video, then I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. For now, I hope that you have a lovely, lovely day or evening, and I hope to see you in another video. Doei!